Everyone, and welcome to the Concession Stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of the brand new action thriller starring Mark Wahlberg, Flight Risk. And this film is from the director of Braveheart and Apocalypto and The Passion of the Christ. You may know him by his government name, Mel Gibson. I found it funny, the promotion to this film leading up to the release. That's how they market it. From the director of Apocalypto and Braveheart. No, they never mentioned Mel. I can't even say his name. Mel Gibson's name at all, because if you're in the know, you know that Mel Gibson isn't, as a person, isn't the most flattering human being. But I don't care. The dude can direct some films. The names of the films I just mentioned. I loved Braveheart. Who didn't love Braveheart? Apocalypto is probably one of the most underrated films of all time, in my opinion. Nobody talks about Apocalypto, but it is an amazing film. Amazing. The Passion of the Christ. I mean, I know atheists who liked The Passion of the Christ. So the dude can direct some movies. And let's not forget, he's also a pretty decent actor as well. So his work in front of and behind the camera is pretty awesome. Now, it's when he's at home where the problem comes in with Mel Gibson. I'm not a fan of that Mel Gibson, but I'm a fan of the Mel Gibson who gives us film. And I was super excited for this movie. He's teaming up with Mark Wahlberg, who is playing a villain, I think, for the first time since his very first film, Fear, which came out in the 90s. I think this is the first time we've seen Mark Wahlberg as a villain. I'll have to go through his filmography, but nothing comes to mind other than that. And I was excited for that. I love contained stories. I love these little, I guess, claustrophobic type settings when it comes to film, where it just takes place at one location or in one location, and this location so happens to be inside of a little airplane. And I'm all in for that. Starring along with Mark Wahlberg, we have Michelle Dockery, who, if you're a fan of Downton Abbey, she was on that. And the only reason I know that, I think my wife watched a few episodes of Downton Abbey, and that's where I recognized her from. And it was something else I seen her in recently. I'm blanking on what it was, but I just saw her in something else. And also Topher Grace. He pops up in this film. These are only 3 actors in this movie. Yes, you have extras, I guess you could say, throughout the film. But as far as the majority runtime of this movie, this is a 90-minute movie. I would say for 75 minutes of it is just Mark Wahlberg, Michelle Dockery, and Topher Grace on this airplane. And that's all I needed to see. Yeah, I was super excited. The plot for this film, in case you don't know, is about a pilot transporting a U.S. Marshal and a government witness across the Alaskan wilderness, where the identities and intentions of those aboard come into question. I was really hoping that we can get through the first month of 2025 without a stinker, without a film that I didn't enjoy. Because so far, I've been enjoying the films that have come out this year. I'm like, man, normally January is like the dumping ground. You get the bad movies in January, and then it starts to kind of pick up mid-February into March, and then it's on to summer. But January is normally the dumping ground. But over the last few years, to be honest with you, January has put out some gems, And this year, I mean, we got Wolfman, which I enjoyed. I liked Back in Action, even though that wasn't theatrical. I still liked it. And so we were on a good little trend here. Well, I am sad to announce that we get our first stinker of 2025. and it is Flight Risk. Man, I'm so disappointed with Flight Risk for so many reasons. So many reasons. Um, well, let me say the reasons that I'm not disappointed with. The things that I did enjoy about Flight Risk. I mean, it wasn't unwatchable. It wasn't horrible like the worst movie I ever seen. Mark Wahlberg in this role, I enjoyed him. He was absolutely the best part of this movie. He knew exactly what type of movie he was in, and he dove right into it. The man had a bald head. He actually shaved his head for this role, for this little role in the film. Topher Grace, who at the start of the film I didn't like. I'm like, man, this character is gonna get annoying real quick, and he did. Within the first 5 minutes, I was like, my God, why is he in this movie? Uh, it was just so. It wasn't Topher Grace. It was the character, the way that character was written, and he was just aggravating. But as the film went on, and he had more to do, I started to enjoy his character more, and I appreciated his character, and so I did enjoy that. The first 30 minutes of this film was great. I was hooked in. It will hook you in the first 30 minutes. And then, no pun intended, it nosedives. It just, it takes a steep dive into the mountains after that. But the first 30 minutes, I mean, the setup was great. I'm like, okay, this is going to be pretty intense. No, it didn't go that way. That's pretty much all I have as far as positives. My negatives, and going back to Mark Wahlberg's character, as much as I loved his character, he was great. He's the one thing about this film that gives it any watchability. He disappears at times throughout the film. His character, he's in the film. You know, you see him on the plane, of course, because where else could he go? But he disappears. And the film kind of suffers when he's not interacting with the other two characters. And it was just silly to me. It made no sense throughout. It was just, it was kind of vague, you know. Also, his character, really vague. We still don't know anything about his character, which, okay, I'm all for leaving things a little open-ended, you know. I'm all for that. But the problem I had early on, within the first 30 minutes of the film, at least when we get first introduced to his character, is kind of hinted at that we're going to get a reveal from his character, and we never get it. Michelle Dockery, God bless her, really good actress. You know, the little bit I did see of Downton Abbey, you know, I'm not a Downton Abbey guy, but the little bit I did see when my wife was watching, she showed she could act. This wasn't it. This was a character horribly miscast. She just didn't move the needle for me in this film. She is truly the star of the movie. She is the protagonist. She's the hero. Or the heroine, should I say? She is the star, you know. And she just didn't have that that weight, I guess you could say. It's no slight against her. I don't think anybody could have helped this film. You could have put Sigourney Weaver, or you could have put Meryl Streep in this film. It wouldn't have helped it. It was just the reality of what else, what more can you do on an airplane? You know, the concept was a beautiful concept, but once it started to play out, you're like, well, what more can they do on this airplane? You know, it's really nothing else they could do. There's no superhero type things. There's nothing out of the realm of possibilities. It's about as realistic as you could get. And so it's kind of bland when it comes to that. So her character really was just an average person. It was nothing extraordinary about it. You know, it was just bland. It was truly bland. Speaking of bland, Mel Gibson's direction here, that's the shocker. Now, if I would have directed this film and it came out like this, it's understandable. But we're talking Mel Gibson. We're talking about a man, and let me revert back to what I was saying earlier, a man who directed Braveheart, a man who directed Apocalypto. You mean to tell me that this is the sword you're gonna die on? This just looks. It was just bad. He built no tension. There was no tension built in this film, in the most tense situation you can think of, and the tension wasn't there. That's what I was excited for going into this movie. I'm like, man, we're gonna get a suspenseful, very intense thriller from Mel Gibson, because we know he doesn't hold nothing back, personally and professionally. He doesn't hold nothing back. So I was really looking forward to that. Now you get some moments there where there's a fight between Mark Wahlberg's character and Michelle Dockery's character. Yeah, that was kind of intense, but that lasted about a minute. And I guess you could say the final moments of the movie was a little intense, but that's about it. That's about it. The rest of the movie was just bland. It was truly bland. And now I will give him credit for this. This movie, like I said before, is 90 minutes long. We didn't have to sit there for an entire 2 hours. They took off. The movie starts off, they gets on the plane, and you're on the plane to the very end. And that's that. It up and down, man. It was it was a 30-minute flight plan. Or a 90-minute flight plan, I should say. It was very short in that regard. I guess you could say the pacing was good in that sense. It was in and out. But man, I don't know. I don't know if I'm more upset with myself or Mel Gibson and everybody involved here, because I did have a vision in my mind. I guess you could say a certain expectation in my mind going into it, and it didn't meet it. But at the same time, at least get in the ballpark, at least be on the same road as I was thinking. It didn't even get close. This film, honest to God, and if it ever comes out, I would be like, I told you so. This film feels like it was AI written. It feels like GPT wrote this film. From the dialogue to the action sequences, it just felt very generic. Had this film came out 30 years ago, it probably would be gangbusters. But unfortunately, it's 2025 and nobody asked for this film. Flight Risks gets a letter grade of a generous C-. Yeah, it gets a C- simply because those first 30 minutes were so entertaining. The movie comes on, we establish who the characters are, they get on the plane, we're in the plane, there's interaction between the protagonist and the antagonist, and we get some nice setup, and all that was great. That's what saves the movie. Then after that, it just goes downhill very fast, and we never reached that point again in the film. But that's just one man's opinion. I would love to know yours. Did you check out Flight Risk? How did you like it? Or are you planning on checking it out? Or are you just going to wait for it to pop up on Amazon or Netflix or something? I wouldn't blame you, but I would love to know your thoughts. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network everywhere. Don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video if you don't mind. Also, don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the Concession Stand here on the KB Radio Network. I thank you all for joining me for this review of Flight Risk. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.